good evening, everyone. My name is Sharon Hedgen Lee, and I'm an assistant professor, faculty fellow of Gender and Sexuality Studies in the Department of Social and Cultural Analysis. Each year, NYU hosts an acclaimed Artist-in-Residence at the Asian Pacific American Institute. Artists-in-Residence are invited to bring their notoriety, their artistic work, and their involvement with the APA community onto NYU's campus. The Artist-in-Residence uses their time at the APA Institute to create important new work, artistic retrospectives, forums, and conferences. Scholars, fellow artists, and community members familiar or new to the artist's work gain a unique opportunity to engage with the Artist-in-Residence within a university setting. On behalf of the APA Institute, I'd like to thank you all for being here at the Kickoff event for our very first comedian in residence, Hari Kondabolu. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to ask you guys not to film any of tonight's events. Hari has asked that you not film any of his comedy in particular. You may take photos, but no filming. So I'm sure he needs no introduction, but in case any of you want to know more, Hari is a Brooklyn-based, Queens-raised comic who has performed, as we've seen, on The David Letterman Show, Conan, Jimmy Kimmel Live, John Oliver's New York stand-up show, and his own half-hour Comedy Central Presents special. He was most recently a writer and correspondent for the Chris Rock-produced FX show Totally Biased with Kamau Bell. Bell has described Kondabolu, yes. Give it up. Bell has described Kondabolu as, quote, the comedy equivalent of a punk rock concert that breaks out at a human rights rally. I think that's spot on. Appropriately, Kondabolu released his debut stand-up comedy album, Waiting for 2042, last March. When in New York City, he co-hosts the Untitled Kondabolu Brothers podcast with his younger brother Ashok, aka Dapwell, from now defunct rap group Das Racist. And Ashok is here with us tonight and will also be joining Hari and Jeff later on stage. Kondabolu attended both Bowdoin College and Wesleyan University, graduating from the former institution with a BA in comparative politics in 2004. He was an immigrant rights organizer in Seattle from 2005 to 2007, before earning a master's in human rights from the London School of Economics in 2008. He went to Townsend Harris High School in Flushing, Queens, and the school's mascot, Hari the Hawk, was named after him during his senior year. This evening, Hari will be joined by Jeff Chang, who, as executive director of the Institute for Diversity in the Arts, is continuing his long career specializing in culture, politics, the arts, and music. His first book, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, garnered many honors, including the American Book Award and the Asian American Literary Award. His new book, Who We Be, The Colorization of America, will be released on St. Martin's Press this month, and I believe that we'll be selling copies in the back afterwards if you're interested. And he's currently working on two other book projects, one titled Youth, and also a biography of Bruce Lee. Now, I have to confess that I'm standing up here wearing two caps. In addition to my assistant professor cap, I'm also wearing a big, giant, geeky fan cap. I remember the first time that I heard Hari's comedy. My friend and fellow academic was like, yo, you have to hear this, right? There's this amazing political South Asian comedian, and he's saying all the things that we're thinking, but in a really hilarious way. So, we proceeded to put on a YouTube clip, and I remember it was a clip of Hari doing stand-up in Aspen. And he does this bit where he's telling a largely white audience that they're really smart for being in Aspen on top of a mountain because it would be harder for them to be found when the revolution comes to get them. So watching this, and we're like, dude, this guy is brilliant. And then we're like, how is he still alive? Right? So I am thrilled that we here at the APA Institute can provide Hari with asylum so that he may continue to get us one step closer to the revolution through his comedy. Please join me in welcoming Hari Kondabolu.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I grew up in Queens, New York, and whenever I fly home, my father will still pick me up at the airport, which is really sweet of him. And this happened a couple of years ago. I land at LaGuardia Airport, I get my bags, I'm walking towards the car when this lady I'd never seen before runs in front of me, gets into the back of our car. Now that, of course, is strange, because that's never supposed to happen. So I opened the door, I said, "Excuse me, miss." Before I finish, she cuts me off. She says, "Look, I'm sorry, but I got here first. Maybe you should walk a little faster." At this point, it becomes clear that she thinks she's in a cab and my father is a cab driver. Because apparently she's so racist, she looks at the color of the driver before looking at the color of the car. Well, clearly he has the markings of the servant class. Drive me. About 5 seconds after I realized what happened, she realized what happened, and I know she realized what happened because she scooted over to the left-hand passenger seat, opened the door, and started running. And I was frustrated not only with the situation, but with my reaction to it. I blew an amazing opportunity because what I should have done is I should have opened that door and I should have said, "Excuse me, miss, you want to split this cab?" Because if we split that cab, all sorts of fascinating possibilities could occur. Fascinating questions, right? Questions like, is it kidnapping if we take her where she wanted to go? Is it ransom if she pays a reasonable fare for such a trip? I hate how immigrants are talked about in this country. I was watching CNN, which was my mistake, and they were interviewing this woman in Arizona who's against immigration, right? And she said, "Look, we're just trying to bring this country back to the way it used to be." The way it used to be. Lady, you're in Arizona. It used to be Mexico. I don't get it. I don't get all the anti-immigrant sentiment in this country, because this is a country that says it's the greatest country in the world. We're the best. We're number one. Then we get upset when people actually show up. But when you advertise something, sometimes people buy it. That's how it works. I hate intolerance. I don't know why we're talking about tolerance to begin with. It's 2014. We should be at acceptance and love. What's this tolerance business? Like, what do you tolerate? Back pain? I've been tolerating back pain and the gay Latino at work. It's a low bar for humanity, is all I'm saying. But the country's changing and people are freaking out about it. And I know they're freaking out because I keep hearing about the year 2042 on the news. For those of you who don't know, 2042, according to census figures, is the year when white people will be the minority in this country. They'll be 49%, and white people are freaking out about it. Don't freak out, white people. You were the minority when you came to this country. Things seem to have worked out for you. But here's the bigger point. Here's the more important point. 49% white doesn't make you the minority. That's not how math works. 49% white is only the minority if you think the other 51% is exactly the same. Well, it's 49% white people and 51% you people. That's the only way that works. Because that 51% is not a united front. And it's easy to figure this out. Just ask a black guy and a Korean guy what happens when the black guy walks into the Korean guy's store. That interaction might not be pleasant. It might not be like, hey, teammate. How's it going, teammate? Pretty excited, you? 2042, am I right? That's probably not what's happening there. There's some historic tension. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, Hari, you're saying that 51% is not exactly the same, but you're assuming that all white people are the same. Yes. No. I'm joking, right? Because white isn't a thing. Race isn't a thing. It's a social construct. It's a way to divide us. It's not real. And for the minorities in this room, you know this is true, right? Because when you ask your white friends what their cultural heritage is, they never just say white. They give you a math equation. I'm a third German, and a fourth Irish, and 1/16th Welsh, and 1/40th Native American for college applications. Damn, Steve, all these years I thought you were just white. Thank you very much.
Hari, how are you? Good to see you. Thank you for being here, please. Hari Kondabolu, ladies and gentlemen. We're teammates.
Whoa!
First of
hey,
all,
everybody! There's so many people here. I like to keep the show in the dark, so I can pretend this isn't happening, because it's a very bizarre and unnatural thing to try to make strangers laugh. So thank you all for being here. This is cool. Yeah.
Hari Kondabolu.
You're great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That was an amazing set.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Amazing set.
I think I was supposed to do 15 minutes, and I think I did an hour 40.
I think so,
So
too.
it's long. So
It's okay. I don't think anybody was complaining.
everyone was great. That was fun. Yeah.
I was really interested, actually, in how do you write a joke? How do you kind of pull it together? Does the idea come first? The punchline come first? And then also you're very meta with it. You do a joke, and then you do the joke about the joke.
Right.
And then you do a joke about the joke about the joke.
Yeah. No, it's very boring. No, it varies. Early on I wrote everything out. Like every single word was written out, and I almost like recited it because I was so afraid to just be myself on stage, just because it's like, oh, but that could fail. But if I write stuff down, it's funny, and I'll know what's funny, I'll rewrite it. And so I did that, but the problem with that is it makes it very hard to be in the moment, to be genuine, to be connected to people. If something funny happens in the room, and I'm like, well, that's not in the script, so I'm just gonna... Then people know you're phony, and at that point it kind of kills any illusion that you're a funny person, or you're just reading stuff that you've memorized. So, initially I think that's where I started, and then, you get things where you find a funny moment and you add a line, and then all of a sudden the joke gets fuller. What I do more now is I'll have an idea. Sometimes it'll be a series of a couple of premises with maybe a punchline at the end, and I'll just go on stage and just let it out. Like whatever comes to my head, like in terms of setting it up and delivering the stuff. Because like when you have a conversation with people, you aren't scripting every word of that conversation, unless you're Illuminati. How many of you are fucking Illuminati in here? But I think it's so stupid. Sorry.
They're actually up there, man.
Of course, right? Or underneath.
Or underneath, right? Exactly.
In their bunker. But so I do a lot of, I have the premise, I have the ideas, I have a couple of lines I want to get to, and I find some way to deliver it so it sounds natural, and that helps me overall, because then that's how I normally talk. I'm delivering it the way I normally talk, and the way you write sometimes isn't always the way you talk, right? So I do a lot of that. And in terms of like adding layers to stuff, it's usually I'll have the jokes, and all of a sudden I see the connections and the callbacks. Or on the album, there's a few like really ridiculous kind of callbacks or structural things. And one of my big heroes is a comedian named Stuart Lee, who's a British comedian who plays a lot with the form. And so for me, that's been a gigantic influence in terms of like, there's jokes. Between the jokes, and the jokes themselves are fine, but there's a lot more to play with that. That empty space is also useful, right? So, there's a lot of that. Ultimately, you just have to go up and do it, take the beating, and move on. Like that. Sometimes every show's not going to be great, and you find the room where there is something, and you build on it. So.
The sort of the Andy Warhol joke.
All right. No, that's
unfinished joke. I don't know.
It's weird
it was interesting. You were trying to test that out. What were
I've
you doing with
been
that?
trying to test that out for months now. It's It's not, because it's not done. And I don't know whether I can leave it that way. It's a funny idea that I'm like milking with everything I got, but it's just like, it's not that good. It's like, and I think, and I don't mind the idea that I ran out of things. I just feel like I can make it stronger. I mean, that's one of the goals of this year at NYU. I'll have an office on campus, and I guess I could have office hours, but it's a waste of all our times. Let's be honest. Like, there's nothing I can tell you.
Folks could come in. You could try a joke out on them.
Right. Well, I think that I have an NYU email too, by the way, which is amazing. By the way, I got some of your emails today. I didn't know how to set it up. It's been about 2 months, but yeah, we could have coffee sometime. Yeah, sure.
If you have hate email for him, you know where to send it.
But it's one of the goals of this year was to have, this was a bigger kind of room, but like to have smaller rooms where I could like workshop things and figure out ideas and material, and then from there do stuff with it after that. But like I feel like this would be a fun place to start, because when I started in high school and college. Like my first thing I ever did was when I was a senior in high school at Townsend Harris High School in Flushing, Queens. Woo, right there you go, on cue. Big ups, there. Big ups. I'm old, but so there is. I started doing comedy in high school, and then throughout my time at Bowdoin College, and also I went to Wesleyan for my junior year as my study away, because I wanted to go to Connecticut so bad. And that's kind of where I started, was like performing as a college comedian to other college students. So I love the idea of, okay, look, there's like 40 spots. If you're free on a Thursday night, like I'm going to be in this classroom trying stuff out, and you'll hear an hour of stuff, 8 minutes of which is probably usable. But if you're okay with that, hey, I'm around this year. So, and that's some of the best stuff. Like I fly out to Seattle often, where I started. I'll rent a 40-seat theater, and I'll just do stuff. My strongest base is probably in the Northwest, and so I'll like work on new material. But Seattle's a bit of a commute from here, and the idea that I could do that,
especially by rickshaw,
especially with white dudes dying along the way, and
Gotta get
which
more.
is not green. They're not sustainable
they're not
as a result of the
sustainable.
census figures.
It's hard. Make sure you have the cupcakes
Right.
available and that kind of thing.
But I mean, I think that this is a great opportunity to build on that, and this is performance. Ultimately, it has to happen on stage, and it can't just be well written, because then I could just do essays for The Believer, which I would love, but they don't ask.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, I mean that's that's a lot of this is written live. So
One of the things that you and I have talked a lot about is sort of race and representation.
yeah,
And I've been obsessing about it. I got this new book that I did about it and that kind of thing. And it seems like, I'm a little older than you are. Our generation was really fighting against invisibility.
yeah,
And it seems like nowadays it's a different kind of question.
sure.
A lot of your jokes are actually about visibility,
Yeah.
right? I love yoga. I love Indian food, that kind of stuff.
I don't think
And
I
you
said
have to
any of
deal with
those
that.
things.
Well, but you know what I'm saying. You said...
Who are you
No,
confusing me
not
with, Jeff? I get it. I'm gonna
Dealing
step
with that.
outside, yoga. I get
dealing
it.
with that, right? No, you've done those things too, no?
Well, I've made fun of those things.
Yeah.
But like,
But I'm saying, the questions are different, I guess.
yeah,
these days.
definitely. Because I mean, it's so funny because I'm 31 years old. I'm not that much older, but to you, it's like you're 80 million years old and you're old. But like, there is a bit of a gap where when I was growing up, we had no one. Like we had if you remember Short Circuit 2, we had Fisher Stevens, who I thought was Indian. Then I discovered, he's a white dude pretending to be Indian. That sucks. And I had people in commercials, bit actors in commercials who would use accents because they needed to work. Or you had Gandhi, Ben Kingsley's half Indian. That's cool. And we didn't have that. And we had Apu, which is voiced by a white dude. So there's such a limited range of images that we had, you know what I mean? And now you grow up you have Aziz, you have Mindy, you have so many different actors in so many shows. Cal Penn, it's just so many Asif Manvi, it gets bigger and bigger. And so as a South Asian person, there certainly is okay, we exist. The first battle was just existing. Right. Now, all right, we exist. What are we going to do? Can we write our own scripts? Can we share our own stories? Right. So that's why when I hear about Fresh Off the Boat. Right. It's exciting. Eddie Wang got his show made, and the cast is amazing. My buddy Randall Park's in it, and it's just people are getting better parts and more interesting roles and sharing their stories, and not just letting other people, share their stories for them. And that's a big difference.
Randall Park has, of course, this role on Veep where
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily have to be an Asian American actor, but because he's an Asian American actor
Yeah.
in that role, he sort of brings a whole different kind of spin
Oh.
to the position.
Which is huge. I mean, and here's another thing. I think growing up, and I don't know what it's like for you all, but like I know that, I think it's probably not that different in this way, but like we have to look, as people of color, we have to look at, it's mostly white characters and trying to relate to white characters on a human level, because they're human beings. Yet they won't give us parts as regular human people, because it's like, well, no, white people can't relate to that. Do you realize how unfair that is? Like, we have to, like, of course they're human. And people fall in love, and I can understand that, even though that's nothing like my life, and I don't have those issues, and these aren't like my parents, but I will find a way to relate and enjoy this, versus, no, you can't exist for rest of America, because rest of America will freak out if you existed. How come every movie that takes place with black characters in like the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it's always about race and racism, right? And of course that's important, but how come two black people in the 60s just can't fall in love? Why can't it be a story about them falling in love? And race can be an impact, especially depending on where you are at that time period. But sometimes you just fall in love with people, and that's what being human is. How come we can't just fall in love? You know what I mean? And I feel like that's hard when like you still, it's clear that being a person in this country by default is white. And when we specify race, it's always non-white people who are specified, and that's upsetting. And we do the same thing, you know, with being straight. We do the same thing, you know, with cis people. Most people still don't know what cis means. Like that, we're making progress, but it's still, that's where we are. And so, you know, it takes a while, but we have to change the things that we've, you know, been brainwashed into believing is the way it has to be. Yeah.
Let's show this clip that you did of a piece you did for Totally Biased.
Yeah, this is the first clip I did for.
Next Tuesday,
there you
Fox
go.
premieres Mindy Kaling's new show, The Mindy Project. Next Tuesday, Fox premieres Mindy Kaling's new show, The Mindy Project. The Office star will now play a doctor looking for love. This is the first sitcom created and starring an Indian American. To discuss this historic occasion, here's Totally Biased writer and Indian American Hari Kondabolu. Hari Kondabolu, everybody.
Mindy Kaling has the first ever sitcom starring an Indian American. This is huge. We've had an amazing run the last few years with more Indians in the public eye than ever before. There's like 14 of us now. Oh, hey, how'd I get up there? That's progress in real time. There's now enough Indian people where I don't need to like you just because you're Indian. Because growing up, I had no choice but to like this. Yeah. Apu, a cartoon character voiced by Hank Azaria, a white guy. A white guy doing an impression of a white guy making fun of my father. If I saw Hank Azaria do that voice at a party, I would kick the shit out of him. Yeah. Or I'd imagine kicking the shit out of him. I mean, we only put up with Apu for so long because he was still better than this. Yeah, that's us eating monkey brains in Indiana Jones. Indians don't eat monkey brains. I don't know how many times I have to make that clear. You can't just make up random racist shit and pretend it's true. I mean, what if I said white people's eyes turned red in photographs because they're part devil? All right. Now I'll tell you something that's not true. I'm joking. I'm joking, kind of. Anyway, things are getting better. And now that we have so many more famous Indian people, I can publicly talk shit about famous Indian people. Hey, Bobby Jindal, you're the governor of Louisiana and you're Indian. That's an unbelievable achievement. But you're against abortion and gay marriage, so you can go to hell. Hey, Dinesh D'Souza, you have really nice skin. You must use cocoa butter. But you made the new anti-Obama movie 2016, Obama's America, so I wish you didn't exist. Yeah, and it hurts. And it hurts me to say that because you look like my uncle, Tom. And hey, actors who agreed to be in this commercial.
Wireless fees and taxes bite like a cobra.
Get a cellular mongoose, Metro PCS.
Do I really need to explain why I hate this? That's two stereotypes at the same time. Stereotypes in stereo. And finally, Dr. Sanjay Gupta. I hate you. I mean, you're a good dude and all, but why you gotta be so handsome and be a doctor and make my parents feel bad? Anyway, congratulations to Mindy Kaling on her new show. I'll be honest, I was a little worried this week when I was told Mindy was in Glamour magazine dressed as a Simpsons character. Oh God, no. Progress. I'm Hari Kondabolu.
So that's what progress looks like.
I was backstage favoriting everything people had tweeted at me. So if you're wondering why
That's
your
a good
phone
use of
just like,
time.
did that just? Yeah, I was doing that right now. Yeah, I didn't read anything you read. Just favorite.
I was just thinking, actually, there's one thing that you and President Obama share. I was just thinking about this Sanjay Gupta piece, right? Your parents feeling bad and that kind of thing. I feel like, you and President Obama both got your start as organizers. And I wonder if we're not selling our Asian American youth short by telling them to become doctors or go work for Goldman Sachs or that kind of thing. We should tell them
Doctors, yes, but Goldman Sachs, no. But, yeah.
But I'm saying, maybe we should tell them to become community organizers because that's how you can become a president or the artist-in-residence at NYU.
The goal is to be what you want to be, and
Yes.
I think that's and it's an easy thing to say because it's a privileged thing for me to say, but it depends on Asian American identity is obviously a very complex one. It's also a construct, but you have so many different experiences, right? Like people have this assumption. Well, you're Indian or you're South Asian and you're in this income bracket. I'm like that's a really diverse diaspora. It depends on which wave of immigration. It depends on if you have documents. It depends on what your folks do and what they've had access to. So you're telling if someone's like. My dad works at a gas and my mother stays at home and we're struggling and I'm trying to be a doctor because that supports them, but you're telling me I should be an organizer? If you want to be an organizer, I hope you find your way there. But at the same time, to say that no, I mean, access to money, it changes your life. Access to money and education and the people you meet. At the end of the day, this is all about contacts, right? To some degree, to make money, to some degree, right? You all know all this shit, but I don't know. You know a few rich people, they hook you up, you're set. I know so many people who don't have college educations that are so much smarter than you will ever be. You know how to fucking educate, you know how to read shit, great, but think critically, some of you. I don't mean, I have a master's degree. I know that. Like, I know how this works. Like, education's it's a scam to some degree. You can read this shit. There are books. They're widely available to some degree because the academic journals, they like have like private businesses and shit. So you can't actually access everything. That's the scam of it, right? But like at the same time, like this is mostly about who you meet and how you build relationships. Like the rest of the knowledge is accessible to some degree. So I mean, it's, you know, I don't know why, I realize that I'm telling you that you're wasting your time, but I don't mean it like that, but do you understand what I'm saying? It's just I know enough people who talk shit about people who don't have fucking college educations, and it's awful. It's like, man, there's so many people who are so much, like, have so much natural talent, are so much smarter than any of us in this room, and they don't get the shot. This is about, like, institutional racism. It's about institutional classism. It's about the system this is built. This is a capitalist enterprise. Let's not fool ourselves, right? How does Abu Dhabi happen at this fucking university? It's a capitalist enterprise. P.S. I cashed the first check, so if you get rid of me, I'm good with that. So I don't think I answered your question,
no,
but that's the organizer in me that's like, let's reframe this conversation to where I would like it to go.
Let's get it on
now this
talking
is turning
points.
into a rally real
Yes.
quick.
Question actually about your folks. Did your folks? What did they say when you said, "I'm going to be a comedian"?
Oh, I never said that. I'm not stupid.
You never? Okay.
I've never been somebody who took. Every risk I've taken has been very calculated and deliberate. So I mean, that has been instilled, and that's definitely who I am. Right? I'm fairly conservative in that way in my choices, which sounds ridiculous, but. You know, went to Bowdoin College, then went to Seattle to be an immigrant rights organizer, took the LSAT as soon as I got there, planned to go to law school, that was the goal. Then I was working at an immigrant rights organization. I was working with refugees, different immigrants who were dealing with workplace discrimination, hate crimes. You were still post 9/11 violence, a lot of that. So I was kind of like the in-between to lawyers, you know, doing direct service. And so I was doing that and doing comedy at night. And so my goal was, okay, I realized I shouldn't go to law school because all the lawyers I met told me that I had a nice personality and it would ruin it. And so I'm like, that might be a good thing to know. And so I decided to get a master's in human rights at the London School of Economics. And so I applied for that. And while I was like applying for that and waiting to see what happened, comedy started taking off. I got discovered up in Seattle, and I got into a thing called the HBO Comedy Festival, which was a big thing back then in terms of discovering new talent. I got on Jimmy Kimmel Live, which was strange because I was on TV, and the next day I flew back to Seattle, got right back to work, and pretended nothing happened. And were you on TV last night? Yeah, kind of. And because it wasn't the plan I had, like I'm unfortunately quite linear in terms of like, well, then this thing happens, and this thing happens, and comedy wasn't the plan. And then the same week I found out about Kimmel and found out about the HBO Festival and got a manager. I got into the London School of Economics. So I took a year off from comedy and got my master's in human rights at the London School of Economics. And then my parents at this point are like, this is weird, what's happening? This was a hobby that he had through college, and now it's a thing. And I decided to pursue my education, missed a unit of class, which was the unit on South African Truth and Reconciliation, which I still feel bad about. And went back to New York to record something for Comedy Central. So even when I wasn't performing, I got another TV credit. I'm like, okay, I had to relearn my jokes, did that. Flew back to London, did my dissertation, finished my master's, and decided after wasting all that money, I wanted to do comedy. So like, to my folks, it was like, this is like, okay, he's made very deliberate, specific decisions. He got a master's degree, and when he decided to pursue this path, he'd already been on TV twice and had a manager. So it wasn't like I was going in with nothing, you know? I mean, and for all the comics who do and all the artists who make that choices, I have so much respect, because it's like, you're going in without a safety net, and that's so hard, and especially in a city like this, when you need day jobs and you need to work, you can't, like, there's a reason people like to move to Portland and small cities where there's like less, like, you can have less income and do what you want. When you're in New York, like, you can't play those games unless you have like your parents like giving you money on the side. It's very hard to just like do whatever you want in a city like this. So, you know, I got lucky in that like this stuff was happening while I was doing other things I really loved to do, and pursued comedy full time. So to my folks, one, they saw a kid who was making really deliberate decisions and had an education behind him. And two, I kind of slowly started lowering their expectations. Like, until they didn't know what the norm was anymore. Like, it's like, law school, you're not going to be a doctor? I don't like blood. Okay, I'm going to get this human rights master's degree. Where is it? London School of Language. Well, okay, then we'll do that. All right. Comedy now, but I'm on TV. Okay, and at the end of it, they don't know what's going on anymore. They've been great, though. Yeah.
I asked that question because I think every day, I'm working at Stanford Institute for Diversity in the Arts. Every day we have students coming up who are like, I really want to do this, but here I am at this university, and my parents have all these expectations. So I wanted to kind of hear your story around that, and also because you guys have an amazing family. I mean, Ashok's in the audience, aka Dapwell, from the defunct crew Das Racist, and we wanted to bring him up, actually. Let's ask him some questions. Ashok is a host of a show called Chillin' Island, which, co-host, and there may be big things in the works for that show. For those of you who already know it and know how dope it is. But we're really happy to have Ashok here.
Did you just physically push me? Like,
all right. The first question is, sibling rivalry, discuss.
We never had anything like that.
No.
Don't lie.
The last really fucked up physical act of aggression I had towards you was we were fighting in the backyard, and we used to stuff wiffle ball bats with wet newspaper, retape the tops, and hit tennis balls with them. They were basically corked wiffle ball bats, and we got into a fight in the backyard of our old house, and I threw it at you, and it hit you in the back, and you made a little scene. And I remember I felt so horrible, because I was the younger brother, somewhat of a bully, and after that I was like, I'm never gonna hit this dude again, and I haven't. Everyone claps because I don't hit my brother. I love addressing college kids because it's like an unwarranted feeling of like, that I've accomplished something because I wasted 10 years of my life that you guys have not yet wasted. Makes me feel good.
I mean, it's fun. You and I, we never actually. We never really fought. We were always good to. We always hung out all the time. Like we never had any of the issues.
None of that noogies shit.
No, it was all the shit's corny. It's like, well, because it's like it's already hard enough. Like, why would you?
Right. And our parents are making us watch Ramayana, and they're like, you see how these brothers act? Act like these brothers. Act like these reincarnations of God. 5-year-old kid,
Yeah. So we have a podcast. It's basically this without Jeff in it.
It's called the Untitled Kondabolu Brothers Podcast. Yeah.
You're a professional. You were a professional comedian. Now you're a professional stand-up comedian, sanctioned by NYU. So there's like 5 layers between you and the real world at this point, which is so incredible. And I congratulate you. That is really the goal in life, is to just be so ensconced by nonsense and titles and stuff that you never have to do anything again.
That's accurate, and your use of the word ensconced is so good.
Yeah. I had a lot of time to think about what I'd say when you ran 9 hours late right now.
Yeah, I went considerably longer. And it's weird also, while going on a rant about the bullshit of a college education, still knowing I'm getting funded by the same.
Of course.
And it's like, so my stakes are somewhat minimal at this point. I don't need NYU.
No.
I appreciate the office space and the money they're giving me. I don't need NYU. It's like a nice little bonus. Like I have a card that says visiting scholar on an ID card. That makes mom happy, and that's good, But like at the end of the day, it's like,
What do they intend for you to do at that office? Whatever you want.
I'm supposed to use it to get work done, but it's I don't like leaving Brooklyn, and it's just.
Maybe I can use it. Could we share this artist-in-residence like we shared stuff when we were kids?
I see the gears turning over here.
If you want to know the actual truth, I suggested it early.
Wow, humiliating. I'm not. I'm humiliated. Right now.
There was a no. There was a no.
Was it was it we'll have to get back to you, or was it like no?
It was that
your backup dancer brother can't sully the reputation of NYU as an artist in residence. Your ex-backup dancer younger brother is not.
Hype man par excellence.
I mean, I'm wondering if they're going to get their accreditation revoked with me being part of this whole thing.
That Abu Dhabi thing, good.
Oh, good I mentioned it, right?
Yeah.
It's a little weird that like that's happening. Like people
Pretty
should
nutty, yeah.
pretty much you should mention that every opportunity you get. Like to
Turning
mention
everything into dorms,
Yeah.
Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, the fact that the whole thing is kind of rigged and like who got the contract and how that was done, how fucked up. That should be a thing that kids talk about all the time. Not all the time. You need some break to like hang out and shit. But like in between the hanging out, you'd be like, yeah, that Abu Dhabi shit's fucked up that NYU's doing.
I read a New Yorker profile about, what's his name, Sexton? That's the guy, right? Well, I'm not going to finish this sentence. It's a terrible idea. And what else is going on?
Sharpening the axes backstage.
Seemed like a nice guy, little head in the clouds, capitalist type guy. Seemed like a nice dude, though. He can drink a coffee with. He's just like us type guy. I guess there's some value in that.
Sexton, who is that? The president?
The president of NYU. Yeah.
Did
you guys hear about that?
I didn't
I
read
was
the
gonna-
contract.
Yeah, let me save your artist in residency here by asking you a question. This is a serious question, and then let's open it up to the audience. We can have all the sexy
absolutely.
questions you want.
Yeah.
Race comedy. You guys, you're up here. Both of you guys actually do shows together on the podcast and that kind of thing. And it just reminded me of this Patrice O'Neill line, which is that race comedy is the one place that you can be up on stage and be like, white people, you're idiots, and people will laugh and pay money to you. I guess, like, I asked the question to Kamal, like, how do you do that? To Kamal Bell, what's the secret? And he didn't answer. I think he didn't want to give the secret up.
But,
So I wanted to ask what the secret was.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily come up here and say white people, you're idiots is how any of us want to be depicted when we talk about race. I mean, because I don't think that's accurate. Because let's say I said white people are idiots, right? Let's say there are white people that are offended by that. Yeah, those are the people I'm talking about. And then the rest of the white people are like, yeah, white people, even there'll be white people like, yeah, fucking idiots, man. It's just, because you know the game is fucking rigged. Like, if you know the game is rigged, then you're gonna like be like,
If you say the game is rigged one more time, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave.
But like you know, like that's whenever it happens. Whenever I say like I'll say white people a lot on stage. Like I like saying the term, like just saying white people. And there are white people that get upset. Like
it's the best.
And when you say that, it's like because they always call us out about what we are or whatever. But like so, I feel like if the white people that get upset about that are the white people, yeah, I'm talking about you. I'm talking about you.
I think.
But the people that are like, yeah, we get it. Like that's. It's not like all white people are painted with one brush in this situation because like it's a construct. It's nonsense. This is all this shit is nonsense. It's made up. It's a way to divide it. It's not a fucking real thing, and people know this shit. Even if they don't use words like social construct or whatever, like they know the shit is bullshit. They know that like on a human level, this is all nonsense.
I mean, there's like a white guilt element that makes something like that's racist or your comedy work with some people. But there's weighing something like this. Like, I'm going to tweet, why white people smell like dogs. Okay, that's a divisive, insane thing to tweet.
Also,
or
wait,
whatever.
Hold on a second. Before we get there, where is this research?
What?
'Cause I've done a lot of research. I don't know this white people smell like dogs.
White people
research.
smell like dogs is a thing. I didn't even make that up right now.
Oh, is that a thing?
It's a well-known fact, yeah. When they're wet.
Fuck.
When they're wet.
All right, let's promote that shit.
So I'm like, should I...
Everyone said we smell like curry for years as
I'm
kids.
saying, that's the whole
White
thing.
people smell like dogs.
Do I want to tweet or say or do this divisive thing?
Yeah.
And and potentially alienate people, and it might be hurt the cause. Versus you guys have like 500 years of talking shit at best, talking shit. Can I tweet this thing? You know what I mean? I'm just an Indian guy with a computer. I'm gonna tweet white people smell like dogs. It doesn't matter. There is no consequence to it. But the reverse side is if you keep building it up, you get your white people smell like dogs, people laugh, you keep, twisting the screw. It's like when girls came out and all the think pieces about girls. And when all the think pieces about how girls is inclusive.
Not the
girls.
gender girls.
I think the screw, the spring exploded and people were like, oh, I'm sick of feeling bad for being white. I love being white and I never liked rap and I'm not a bad person. Like you always risk pushing it too much. And I think that's like a calculation that you have to make.
I mean, I don't feel like you don't want that calculation to always be there, but like when you hear that sound, like that was one too much, I guess.
Yeah.
There are like certain things that like you can't. like you just can't say like yeah, I think that's an example. Like if you talk about girls and and I like my feeling on it is that like it's not for me. I think there's a lot also, and I would say there's a lot of people who don't identify with it, whether they're people of color or just don't like the show, and that's fine. I think the issue is less about the fact that it's like exists. It's more about the exact like how come our voices don't get to exist too, and how come something claims that it's a broader represents a broader piece of humanity, even in a subtle way. And people say, well, that's not what it claims. Well, when you say that Lena Dunham is a voice of her generation, it kind of does that, Like, I don't think it's her fault. I think it's the fault of like a media that constantly has to say shit like that and reinforce that.
This woman and her vision is the be-all, end-all for all women. Yeah.
Yeah. Why do we have
and
to
it's also
deify
there's a
people
dearth
like
of like shows helmed by, created for women. So it's kind of like this is what exists for people, and then you have to gravitate towards something.
Hey man, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I was gonna actually.
I just want to say this real quick. Did you guys hear about the guy who wrote the book about the Nickelodeon shows from the 90s?
Oh, that was annoying.
This guy Klickstein wrote some book about Nickelodeon shows from the 90s and Nickelodeon nostalgia, and he was just doing his press rounds, about the show. Like, I love Pete and Pete or whatever. And this Flavor Wire interviewer, she asked him some questions about people's problems with the lack of diversity on Nickelodeon or something like that. And he goes off on this crazy paragraphs-long rant back and forth saying that how it's nonsense and diversity for diversity's sake, especially when like written by white writers, is tantamount to blackface. And then he mentions this Sanjay and Craig. It's an Indian guy voices Sanjay, and I think Craig is a snake. It's a stupid cartoon. Or
Not voiced by a snake.
Not voiced by a snake. Yeah. And he's like, and I don't understand, like, why does that kid have to be Indian? Like, like he doesn't have to be Indian. It's like, like, what does that mean? Like,
well, that was the thing I was talking.
He's not working at a gas station. He doesn't have to be Indian.
But the point he's missing is the fact that, like, first of all, it doesn't have to be Indian, but it never has to be. It never has to be a person of color. It never has to. And we've seen what happens when it never has. We never get representation. Like, people of color never, and if they do, it's through the lens of white people and what they think works for white people. Versus this is not accurate.
Or in relation to their.
I don't get it though. Was he mad at Dora? Was he mad at Lil Bill? Like, what was?
He says that the quality has gone down, which is look. It's just sad for like a 40-something.
He was mad at Dora.
He was mad at Dora.
Yeah.
He went to,
I'm not even kidding.
And her mochila and all that stuff.
It's just weird for an old like dude to be upset. Like, Nickelodeon isn't the way it used to be when I was a child. When you were a fucking you wrote a book about a thing you liked as a child. It's just sad, man. Yeah.
I mean, I did this piece on Tom and Jerry from the 50s that came out a couple weeks ago, and because they've put this trigger warning now on some stuff for Amazon.
About how there's might be racism
it'll reflect ethnic and racial prejudices of the time.
Yeah.
And people are like, "You killed my childhood," which is just kind of
shut the fuck up.
You know,
they're not being censored or not sold.
Yeah, it's so.
I didn't like that sentence underneath the buy now button.
It's also just like you killed your child. Our childhood was being made fun of or not existing. Okay, so you got to think about a thing now that you're 40. Shut up.
Right. Well, we have some time for questions from the audience. That was really awkward. But we just have a few minutes for questions from the audience.
Time's up.
And then we've got a lot of merch to sell and a reception upstairs.
Oh, I guess we went too long.
We went too long? Everybody's heading out? Okay.
But we're gonna be
time's up. Okay.
We're gonna be outside.
We'll be outside. There'll be a reception upstairs.
We'll be selling books and CDs and stuff, and we can talk and we can chat and. What happened? Okay, yes.
Come on, please.
One question. All right.
Do your thing.
Yes.
My name's Danae. I'm a comedian. I'm here with my sketch group, DNA Comedy.
Hello.
We're big fans of yours. We actually got to perform right after you at an Elliot Glazer show in May, Masterpiece Theater. I don't know if...
Wait, where?
At UCB, Elliot Glazer's Masterpiece Theater. We were dressed in the old people moves with the canes.
Yeah, Ilana was there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hello, hi, hello.
Hey.
Hello.
So we work a lot in the same spaces that you do in terms of topic and subject matter, and our question is, what spaces have you found that you can really support and play with your work? I know you talked about Seattle as sort of this home space, but where in New York City have you really found to be supportive play spaces for you to try out things and do your work here?
It's a two-part answer because I don't know how to do one-part answers, but because I'm overeducated and I write everything in essays with points to, but. I mean, definitely Wyatt Cenac's show in Brooklyn, Night Train, is unbelievable at Littlefield. And Wyatt's been a huge support to me and my brother. And whenever he's out of town or just wants us to host or take a break, and he has us host or I'll host, and it's like that's a great space to work out stuff. I think part of it also is, I've gotten to a point where I got enough of a draw where if I announce a show, like people who like my stuff will come out, and that lets me work on new stuff without like if I have to hear people like the squeak, that fucking squeak. The squeak of like white assholes tightening up when you talk about rape, like that. If I can avoid that squeak in the city, it would be great. You know what I mean? Because this city isn't my city. My city it can't be. New York is too big, and people are from all over, and you have. It's in some weird way, it's like constantly playing to tourists in a bizarre kind of way, right? Like you're not, because it's not people who actually know the fucking city. Like I know the city. I know I killed it in my high school. I could kill it in my high school again, right? So I mean, to some degree, it's cultivating people that like you. Like I love what Phoebe Robinson's doing. If you all know, Phoebe's great, and she has Blaria, like her blog, and I think also podcast, and Phoebe's built a following, and people come to see her and they love what she does, and she gets to grow a little bit more because it's not just catering to what does the industry want, because we're in New York, and what do mainstream audiences want. It's I'm going to build my thing here, and you're going to respect my thing, and that's so it's a little bit of both. You got to play both sides of it. You got to play for everybody because people have to see you and know you exist, right? And the other part is you can build something that is unique. I think that's what Totally Biased was, the TV show I worked on for W. Kamau Bell on FX, and unfortunately on FXX as well. It was an unbelievable experience, but if you looked at those audiences, it was the most diverse audiences you've ever seen in terms of people of color, in terms of queer folks, in terms of just older folks, younger folks. It was everybody. And people saw, the audience was as important, I think, in some ways, as the show. It's yeah, we all exist, and we're in the crowd, and you're seeing us, right? So to some degree, you have to create your base. You have to create, like all these people sharing a space in a room and making that magical experience, and you also have to play the game of it, and just, because the game is rigged. The game.
That's the title of his next album, I think.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll all be outside. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hari Kondabolu, Ashok Kondabolu.